You are listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network.
وتجلي من هناك لشوارزنيجر
Ya lo hace, pierna derecha, directo al arco, golazo, 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 golazo.
This is Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio, your new live show about the beautiful game in all its glory, with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee. MLS, EPL, La Liga, Champions League, all is fair game. Powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us at sportspodcastingnetwork.com.
And good day, good night, and welcome to Soccer Today. No Duane Rollins for now. Maybe you'll join me later. I am Kevin Laramee, and welcome to Soccer Today. The MLS Cup playoff have started. They're underway. 2 games completed last night. TFC are moving on in their first ever home playoff game, 3-1 victory versus the Philadelphia Union, and the LA Galaxy at home took care of their end of the bargain with a 3-1 win as well versus RSL. It started with a Alan Gordon opening goal, then got tied up by a Joey Plata penalty. But then Boateng decided, you know what? I'm going to make my mark on those playoffs with scoring 2 great goals after great runs. Alan Gordon set them both up. What a performance by LA. So LA is moving on to face Colorado in the Western Conference semifinal. And tonight as well, 2 other games. 7:30 p.m. Eastern, you have the Montreal Impact traveling to DC at the old RFK Stadium to face DC United. And later on tonight, you do have as well in Major League Soccer the game of Seattle versus Sporting Kansas City. Winner moves on. So that's going to be very, very fascinating. Then it goes to the games of the weekend. We don't know yet. But tonight, DC Montreal. So in the second half of the show, we will be previewing the Montreal Impact DC United game and the Seattle SKC game. But let's start by talking about Toronto. 3-1 win. Never really was in doubt for Toronto in that game. They opened the score early with Jovinko. Kind of like a volley, a ball that, the net was emptied and he directed the ball in it. It was a great play to set it all up. Jovinko with the opening goal. Eventually, one thing that very interesting, if you are a fan of development in the world of soccer, of Canadian soccer, Jonathan Osorio, a kid that was in the supporters sections of TFC when he was growing up, now scored a playoff goal for this very team. So, homegrown, eh? Yeah, you do have that feeling of pride, and you imagine the emotion, the elation that came, especially after the game when you saw all the Toronto FC players taking the gongs and the tambour and all those big case and just starting the drums, basically just starting hitting the drums and do the Iceland type of clap at the end. It was pretty impressive for Toronto. They really, in the words of Josie Altidore, he felt soccer was reborn in Toronto last night. We'll see where that leads. But Toronto FC impressive in their victory. Yes, Philly did try to mount a comeback with a goal by Bedoya, but Bedoya did not have a great first half. Usually it's a mistake-free type of player. One of the reasons why he is so effective in Major League Soccer, he limits the type of mistakes, of ball loss, of possession loss, and he at least usually moves the play, if not forward, at least he's moving the play, and he's really lauded usually for that type of playing style. First half of that game, he did not do that. He did mount a comeback and better his game and had the chance to maybe even tie it up when it was 2-1 after his goal, which came off a corner. That's where Toronto actually had the most difficulty versus the Union. It's on those set pieces, especially late in that game when you had 4 or 5 corners in about 10 minutes. Second one, the goal came, and it was a weird way too. Corners in, there's an exchange of headers, a header to another Philly player, to another Philly player, to another Philly player, and then falls to the feet of Bedoya. Bedoya hits it, buries it 2-1. And then the game opened up. Philly really went for it, had a couple of chances to tie it up, actually. And eventually, what was going to happen happened. A counter happened, and Josie was in the box. Ball went to his feet. He finished it 3-1, and that's how the game finished. But for a team like Toronto, it's a very they can replicate, so it's replicatable, it's redoable, that type of performance in the playoff. The first one I would qualify as a greedy goal just because it's a second effort of a Giovinco following the ball that he's able to finish it. But those are the type of play that are replicatable in a playoff setting. Now going on a home and away series versus New York City FC, it's hard. It's going to be hard to play at that Yankee Stadium pitch, small pitch. You don't have a lot of space for Giovinco and for an Altidore. For Giovinco, you're not going to have the same amount of space, literally, to just use his skill, get open, find either a look on goal or an open teammate. For an Altidore, he won't be able to get on those crazy runs like he likes to do. But being a poacher like he is as well, he might be able to take advantage of that situation because the pitch is so small that basically from half field, if you're a poacher, you can score. So that's the type of field that we're going to see in Yankee Stadium in that home and away series. It's going to start this weekend. It's going to start in Toronto, and you will have maybe the opportunity for Toronto to put a few past the goalkeeper of New York City FC and maybe get an advantage going into Yankee Stadium, which that would probably be best case scenario. Toronto gets 1 or 2 on home, and well, you're gonna say, yeah, Kevin, it's always the best case scenario. It's always what you're trying to do when you're in home and away series. You're trying to take care of things at home and maybe get a goal, and then you have to put the pressure on the other team at home on the second leg to get the result. That could be possible for Toronto, but they are facing New York City FC this weekend, Saturday or Sunday. Now, the other game last night, the LA Galaxy versus Colorado, a lot of rumblings of people not getting along, people last week not practicing maybe when they should have been. Maybe the injury wasn't as severe as it was related to be. But guess what? They're all back in training. You had this week the Gerard, the Keane, and all the names of the big names of the Galaxy back on training. But last night, it was Emmanuel Boateng and Alan Gordon. Lennon Donovan played well as well in a creative type of aspect. He wasn't involved on the score sheet, but he's involved on creating the play that led Boateng to score those goals, that led Alan Gordon to find Boateng open, or Alan Gordon to get the opening goal of that match. Alan Gordon, surprise starter in this game, scored in the 22nd minute. Very impressive for him. The MLS veteran, the former Goonies of San Jose, one of the players that used to come off at 70th, 60th minute, and then at the 90th used to score for San Jose to help San Jose either get a late win or the late draw. Back 2-3 years ago, we had that spell of 2 years that the Goonies existed in Major League Soccer. Goonies, because of the Goonies never say die attitude. That's where that nickname came from. But Alan Gordon last night, the type of victory, the type of performance that he did for LA is very impressive. Nobody was expecting Alan Gordon or Emmanuel Boateng, for that matter, to be the decisive factor in this game. It was closer than the score would say. Before heading into this game, RSL had only scored 2 goals in their last 6 matches. So they were in a goal-scoring drought. So when they got to tie it up, to level it up, yes, it's on a penalty, so it's still no goal on the open play. Still 2 goals in 7 games now if you take that stat on the run of play. But for RSL, they got the draw, and they, you know what, we're getting a result now. We can push, maybe try to absorb. But those runs, the way they were set it up, the way they even Landon Donovan called it Messi-like, maybe not as much, but they were impressive. And when you have Boateng getting on 2 runs, very similar like this, getting on 2 runs, 10 minutes apart, not even, finishing those runs, getting LA on top in the box score, Then they're at home. They're at StubHub Center. Yeah, the RSL was not going to come back in that game. So is it the end of an era for Real Salt Lake? Is it the end of the Beckerman and company? It changed a lot over the years because if you remember to RSL's heyday, you had players like the Espindolas of this team that were part of it. Now they've been long gone, but you do have a certain core of that player still there. Is it going to be their swan song? Is it the year where Beckerman, basically, who is the flagship of that generation of the 2009 surprise RSL winner of the MLS Cup, the surprise winner of the Cup in 2009. Like the Beckerman is like the flagship of that generation, of that team, and he's still the leader, the core, the backbone of this team. Will be interesting to see what happens on this side of RSL. RSL have long moved Garth Lagerwey have long moved away from this team, and the Jason Christ of this world. It's a different RSL on the pitch. It's probably going to follow suit starting next year when you take the expansion draft and all those things. Are they going to protect the big stars? Are they going to let a couple of them go? So for RSL, I'd say I wouldn't go as far as saying a changing of the guards, because that happened a few different times over the last few years where one player here and there left. But will we see like a mass exodus? Will we see 2, 3, 4, 5 players leave RSL? Maybe one or two, one expansion draft, a few others here and there trades, and maybe the RSL of next year will have a totally different feel than the one that we have seen in those playoffs. So now LA is going to face Colorado in a home and away series. It's going to start in LA. It's going to finish in Colorado. Can Colorado prove everybody wrong? It's Galaxy time. Yeah, it's the playoffs. They're coming in hot, and that's what happens with Galaxy. They can be dangerous. Colorado finished second in the Supporter Shield race. Had an amazing season. Oscar Perea, Pablo Mastroianni, Perea, former Colorado coach, now coaching for Dallas. When you have Mastroianni, the way he built this team in the last 3 seasons, they were really patient with the results, especially the first 2. And then this year, they added a few pieces. And even though Jermaine Jones missed the first 6 games for suspension, and then had that big injury that he was off for 5 months, he's back now, back in the fold. He's probably not going to start again. We'll see if he does. Maybe he will. It's a team where they're hot at the right time as well. So can Colorado become the new Galaxy and run with it this playoffs? We'll see. And it's going to start this weekend with Colorado LA Galaxy. All right, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll preview the Montreal Impact versus DC United. Well, to be fair, it's the DC United versus Montreal Impact game, 7:30 tonight.
You are listening to Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio. Visit sportspodcastingnetwork.com for more.
The Montreal Impact, third time in the playoff in their history. 3 out of 5 ain't that bad. More than 50%. One of the only 3 teams to ever do that. So cheers for that. But no Drogba tonight. Yeah, it's kind of better. Not that not having him is not good, and not having him on the bench, or just the idea of him coming on. Geez, just not having the idea of him coming on the pitch. Yeah, it's one threat that you don't have, but what you do have is a team willing to play together. A team that's not using Drogba as a crutch or as a reference point on the pitch to get him the ball anymore. It's a team that's doing things together when Drogba's not on the pitch. It's a team that goes up together, a team that's less whiny, less complaining, a team that has more space open as a whole. What I mean is, when you have the big star like Drogba, he does suck in 1 or 2 defender, he does create attention, he does generate attention towards him, but the rest of the team is you have to take advantage of that in some way. And you have to a little bit get out of your shape, a little bit get out of your preferred position to take advantage of the space where that space that Drogba creates becomes open, and then you have to take advantage of it. Which is not necessarily easy. When you had an Arduro next to him, he could take advantage of it because of his space. But that being said, when you have a Mancosu and a Piatti, and you will have a probable 11 for Montreal tonight, Evan Bush in the net, Oyongo, Cabrera, Sima, Camera, Toya probably starting. So Kamara maybe in the midfield with Sima, or we'll see how that unfolds. But I do believe maybe Toya. We'll see. There could be a difference there. It could be a form question here. We'll see. But you do have a midfield that will probably be consisted of Bernadello, Donadel, Bernier, and on top you will have Piatti, Mancosu, and an Arduro, which would be the type of lineup that would be preferred by Mauro is the lineup that he probably had the best result this year with. They have a better record without DJ Drogba than with DJ Drogba, especially if he starts. So that being said, the Montreal Impact are on the road. They have a decent record on the road this year. They're a good road team in Major League Soccer. The last few games against RFK have finished 1-1, and you had that 2-1 victory before that by Montreal. But in all those three games, you had a Billy Mead going crazy and stopping almost everything between those pipes. I remember the famous 1-1 draw beginning of the year where there was 25 shots on net for Montreal, 1 goal. DC United had 1 shot on net, 1 goal. Is it the type of situation we're going to see tonight? Montreal needs to find a way to create space and don't come one against the goalkeeper. That's the type of situation that Bill Lemide will, maybe because of his presence and his skills between the pipe, usually on a one-on-one, Bill Lemide actually has the advantage, and that's very rare. But if you go 2-on-1, leave another guy open, you go with different angles, you go at different type of way to have a realism in front of that. Maybe that's what's needed by Montreal. So the Mancosu Piatti combination up top, it's going to be very amazing, very important. And it will be why, if Montreal does have success tonight, why? It's because of Mancosu and Piatti. The fact that those two players are not players to always going one-on-one. You do have Piatti when he has that right shot open far post. He can create space, but he can go 1-on-5 and he still will try for it. But if you do give him support, you do give him space tonight, if he has another player with him, aka Mancosu, I do feel Montreal has a shot. I did predict a victory of DC United tonight, and I'm going to stick with it, unfortunately, for the Montreal fans, because it is a type of weird situation in Montreal over the last 2 weeks, a Drogba distraction. Let's put it this way. It has to be a distraction, even though your team is in the playoff, playing very well in the last 4 weeks of the season. 2 wins, 2 draws, 4 games undefeated, heading into the playoffs. Able to score. You found a little bit your scoring touch back as well. But all that people talk about is Drogba. Mauro Biello tried to play with his lineup. And yes, they did have a loss. By the way, I forgot the 3-0 loss. But before, so 2-2-1 in the last 5 games of the season for the Montreal Impact. When you do have this squad rotation, a very young squad from Montreal, the debut of Jackson Amel as a starter and of David Chouanière as well. And you had the Lamondre Lefebvre starting in the back line, so 3 homegrown from Montreal. Their last game, the 3-0 defeat versus New England. You did rest a few players. Piatti Arduro did come in late in that game to try to get something out of it, because at this point it was 1-0, and the other result in Orlando, which was Orlando DC United, was 2-0, 2-1, then 3-1. Orlando finished 4-2, but you knew that if you get a result or even a win, you would have that game at home. It wasn't to be. Montreal didn't get the result in that game. It was 3-0 for DC United. You did see a drop in performance from the young players late in that game. They were subbed off for that reason. When you do comes to this game now, you did rest majority of your players, key players especially. Mancosu didn't play, Donadel didn't play, Bernardello didn't play. So when that happens, it gives Montreal more spring in their step tonight. Yeah, they had to travel. It's not far at least. A hop, skip, and a jump in an airplane. Very close. So that being said, can Montreal continue their on the road form? Can Montreal continue to stay compact, take advantage of their opportunities, counter? When they don't have the onus of play on them, Montreal has performed well this season. I'm talking about possession because I think that's a skewed metric. But the onus of play is how I like to describe it. When Montreal's trying to play the ball, doesn't really go the best. Montreal absorbing, and taking advantage of what they can do. Just go back to the CONCACAF Champions League, go back to earlier years with Devayo. We're now back to the same playing style of that, but having a striker in Mancosu, which is a hybrid mix of 75-25, 75% Devayo, 25% Drogba, I would say, to in layman's term, to describe what Mancosu can do. He can hold the ball up. He can involve his teammates, especially Piatti. He does create the space for that, and he can create the time for that while he holds up the ball. But as well, he can put himself in places where if ball bounces and there's a bounce going his way and he's at the right position, make that run, he's not offside. He might be, but he's not as much offside as a Devayo. Gets an opportunity, buries it. It's a goal for Montreal. We can see that happen tonight against DC United. DC United, let's face it though, in their last 6 games have been on fire. They are 4 wins, 1 draw, and 1 loss. The loss came in the last game of the regular season versus Orlando, but they're 4-1-1. And just to correct myself, Montreal is 2-3-1. So 2 wins, 3 losses, and 1 draw in their last 6 games. They were on a 3-game undefeated streak until the loss to the Revolution to finish the season. So form-wise, this is, yes, DC United's more in form. Montreal had DC's number. At least Montreal didn't lose to DC since August 8, 2015. It can be different tonight. And the last loss came in Montreal. Montreal never won in RFK, but Montreal got results before an RFK. Montreal scored goals before an RFK and got 2 draws. Last visit, they got a draw. So if they can replicate that and push the game late, and maybe leave the opportunity for a Piatti to finish a goal at the 89th minute and finish 2-1, that's possible. I still feel 1-0, 2-1 DC might be the scoreline that will happen later tonight. So that will be very fascinating to see which one of them we are going to get. Could be a blow-up. Could be 3-0 DC. Montreal had both experiences in the playoff. They beat Toronto home 3-0 last year in that very same knockout round. But a few years ago, against Houston, they lost 3-0 against a Houston Dynamo in Houston. And with 2 red cards, and did not go well at all. So, which Montreal Impact in a knockout game we will see? The last time the Impact played a knockout round on the road, it did not go well. This time around, maybe we can have a better performance. Maybe we can actually have that game decided late in the game, one way or another. I'll stick with my prediction, unfortunately, for the Montreal Impact fans. I do feel DC is one of the hottest teams heading into the playoff in 2016, unfortunately, and their first scalp is probably going to be the Montreal Impact. But Montreal will put on a great showing. We're trying to put that Didier Drogba distraction to bed by showing that we don't need him on the pitch. That might happen tonight, and who knows? If it's 1-1 or 0-0 late in the game, maybe a Piatti or Mancosu has a magic moment for the Impact. That can be very well possible. We'll take a break and come back and talk about Seattle, Kansas City. You're listening to Soccer Today on SPN Radio. You can find the on-demand version of this very show on iTunes, Stitcher, Feedburner, Podbay Player, Podbean, anywhere you get your podcasts under the Sports Podcasting Network feed. Subscribe to our YouTube page to make sure you never miss a live show talking about soccer today, the MLS post-game show, open lines after dark, 5 rings daily during the Olympics. Make sure you subscribe and give us a follow on Twitter at SportsPodNet and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network. And we're back on soccer today. Kevin Laramee, no Duane Rollins. Today, it was a rough night in Toronto, apparently. And, Seattle, Kansas City, the late game tonight, the last game of this run of the playoffs, to have the chance. Well, I don't know if it's a chance. I don't know if it's luck, but you do have the opportunity to go face Dallas in a home and away series for the winner of this Seattle Sporting Kansas City game. Seattle, surprisingly, a team that was maybe left for dead 7-8 weeks ago, got into a run at the right time. Got hot at the right time. Had a player like Nicolas Lodero taking this team on his shoulder and just plowing through. Let's just plow through this. Let's just get points. Let's just get a playoff spot. And against which was considered one of the contenders early on in the season, before the season started, one of the perennial favorites for the for the MLS Cup. We had Sporting Kansas City. Yes, they were my prediction. If you have followed the show all year, Kansas City was my prediction to win the MLS Cup. And yes, I did change my prediction in the prediction show earlier this week. I do feel the Red Bulls will win the MLS Cup in 2016 versus Dallas. It'll go chalk. You never see that, so might not be right. But Kansas City, Seattle. Seattle, Kansas City. In Seattle, don't expect 60,000 people. That's probably unfair. They don't have the same amount of time in the turnaround to sell out CenturyLink Field like the games in the regular season where they do have more time. Expect a big crowd, though. Kansas City is a team that had a season where they were high and low, but their high were never really that high. Their high was always like third, fourth in the Western Conference, and dipping back below that red line and coming back up and trying to find a landing spot. They finally landed in 5th in the Western Conference. Nothing special. They have to thank the Vancouver Whitecaps as well for the late results versus Portland that gave them a chance to finish there. Yes, you did have a team like RSL that were sliding, and they were almost for sure going to finish 3rd or 4th if we go back to 2 months ago, and now they're barely qualified for the playoff and they're already booted out. But Seattle and Kansas City have to thank Vancouver for tanking as well, to explain why they had a playoff spot this season. But those two teams turnaround for Seattle for sure after the firing of Sigi Schmidt. This team has not just the firing of Sigi Schmidt, but the Clint Dempsey heart condition is their regular heartbeat. Left Seattle in a position where they were missing a lot of firepower. Lodero was able to counteract that, and the rise of Jordan Morris at the right time as well explains the great success that Seattle had late and made them claw the table up to 4th, get a home playoff game, and who knows, maybe get a trip to go to Dallas, and hey, maybe they can surprise everybody. I don't think Dallas wants to face an informed Seattle team that has the likes of Lodero and Jordan Morris that can change a game on a set piece, that can change a game on one moment, one run, one finishing opportunity for Morris. He gets it. It's 1-0 Seattle, and that can change the whole home and away series. Dallas doesn't want that. Dallas is cheering for Seattle. Kansas City, because Kansas City doesn't have Morris. Kansas City doesn't have a Lodero. They don't have a game changer like that. So technically, Dallas will be able to handle Kansas City better if Kansas City is the winner tonight. But I do feel that Seattle is the favorite tonight. Not only are they at home, but they do have two of maybe the top five players in the last month and a half of Major League Soccer, and that would be Jordan Morris and Nicholas Lodero. So that's a very high probability what's going to happen tonight. Seattle's going to get one or two. Maybe Kansas City's going to try to hold on close, but no, it's going to be 2-0, if not 3-0. But the trend is 3-1, so why not Seattle 3, Kansas City 1? And my final score prediction for DC United Montreal, I do feel Montreal's going to get a goal. It's going to be like 1-1. Then probably DC scores a second one, 2-1, unfortunately, for DC United versus the Montreal Impact tonight. Those are the playoff games tonight. So we will take a look and stay tuned to the Sports Podcasting Network either late tonight or more probably early tomorrow morning. We will have a special Off the Woodworks playoff edition where we dissect the DC United and Montreal Impact game. And until tomorrow, 11 a.m. on the Sports Podcasting Network on SPN Radio for Soccer Today, I'm Kevin Laramee, and have a great soccer.
You were listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us, sportspodcastingnetwork.com.